The bright light from the glass walls hit my eyes as I stepped into the conference room. It felt like standing inside a fishbowl. Everyone could see us, executives, assistants, investors waiting beyond the glass. This was the moment we had worked toward for 3 long years. I should have felt proud. Instead, my stomach rolled like a storm. My laptop was open, ready for the data demo I had perfected 100 times. Then Graham Halvorson, my director, walked to the front with a calm smile and started the presentation. "Our new system," he said, "my vision for the company." My hands froze. Slide after slide passed, everything I had built over 3 years, and my name was gone. He spoke about my code, my designs, my sleepless weekends as if they were his ideas. I sat still at the end of the table, forcing myself not to react. The air in the room felt thick and hot. Betrayal doesn't happen quietly. It happens in front of everyone while you fight to keep your face still. I wanted to shout, but something stopped me. If I lost control now, he'd win. So I stayed silent, watching my own life being stolen. My fingers dug into my palms under the table. Every sentence Graham spoke hammered harder. I tried to breathe through my nose, slow and steady. I remembered all those late nights, the cold pizza boxes, the empty office, the times he had gone home early while I stayed until dawn. Now he stood there, cool and polished, wearing my work like a new suit. The investors nodded. They liked what they heard. I could almost see my future rolling away from me. Rage can make you foolish. I nearly stood up. I imagined pointing at the screen and shouting the truth. But I knew he counted on that. If I broke down, he'd call me emotional, replaceable. Then a thought cut through the noise. I knew the project inside and out. There wasn't one function, one equation, one hidden corner of that platform that I hadn't touched. He didn't. I just needed time. Let him speak. Let him enjoy it. The truth always comes to those willing to wait. I leaned back in my chair and folded my arms. The others saw calm. Inside, I was building a storm. 3 years earlier, the project had started as a faint idea on a whiteboard. I remembered drawing boxes and arrows, dreaming of something that could change how data moved through our networks. The company gave us little money, but I saw promise. I taught myself new tools, wrote early versions late into the night. Sleep hardly mattered. I wanted it perfect. Graham had been the one to oversee me back then. He rarely cared about details but loved meetings that made him sound powerful. Still, I thought he respected my work. When problems came, I fixed them alone. When we failed a small investor demo 2 years ago, I was the only one who stayed back that weekend to rebuild it. By the time the system finally stabilized, it could handle 10 times the old capacity. Graham barely understood how. He just said, "Good, keep it up," and left my desk. I didn't mind. Credit wasn't my goal. Success was. So I kept building, until now, when all of that dedication turned into my silence in a room full of liars. After the meeting, people clapped while Graham nodded modestly, pretending to be humble. My face hurt from forcing a polite smile. I returned to my desk. A few coworkers patted my shoulder awkwardly. They didn't know what to say. Some whispered that Graham's leadership had really pulled it together. I wanted to laugh. Leadership. He hadn't written a single line of code. Over the next few days, I saw the shift. People who used to check technical details with me began running to him. "Graham wants us to change this," they said, eyes bright with new loyalty. I watched him charm them, invite them to coffee. Suddenly, I was invisible. But invisibility had its uses. While no one was watching, I kept working. I updated documentation, saved logs, backed up my data privately. Every piece of evidence of my authorship mattered. I didn't know how or when the truth would appear, but it would. Systems like ours are living things. They respond only to the hands that built them. And there are always questions only a builder can answer. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the company laptop. The screen's faint glow bounced off the walls of my apartment. 3 years of work, and one meeting had erased me. But my anger began to take shape, no longer wild, now focused. A careless person can steal credit, but they can't steal knowledge. The code Graham bragged about had layer after layer built for performance tests. One module in particular, the adaptive routing core, was my signature. I alone knew its triggers, the way to reset and recalibrate it when load spiked. Without that, the entire system would falter. I never hid it. I just never taught anyone because no one asked. Tomorrow I'd act normal. I'd attend meetings, respond politely, make notes. Let Graham tighten his own rope. The investors were returning next week for deeper questioning, and when they did, someone would ask about that core. I would stay silent until that moment. Then truth would do the speaking for me. Days turned into a blur of meetings and applause, for Graham. He became the company's new favorite story, the face of innovation. Posters appeared in hallways showing his picture beside words like vision, progress, leadership. I kept walking past them, almost amused. Every compliment pushed him further from caution. He began promising updates we hadn't even planned. I was still on the internal mailing list, though. Each morning, another reporter requested interviews. Graham never mentioned me publicly. Not once. Yet I noticed something strange. He stopped visiting the engineering floor. Instead, he sent hurried messages asking me for a quick summary of some feature before his next call. He was borrowing fresh answers daily, hungry for technical shine he didn't own. That's the danger of stealing someone's work. You inherit the shell, not the substance. When the announcement came that the final investor meeting would happen in 10 days, Graham called it my crowning moment. I smiled behind him. He didn't hear the invisible clock ticking. Behind closed doors, upper management buzzed like bees. Everyone wanted to stand close to Graham now. I heard laughter from his office, caught glimpses of champagne bottles after long evenings. Meanwhile, my tasks were reduced to support maintenance. It meant doing real work while watching others take credit. One night, while finishing server logs, I overheard 2 executives talking through the glass wall. "Do you think Graham can handle it alone?" one whispered. "He'd better," said the other. "Investors want a solid technical lead, not just a talker." Their doubt was small, but I grabbed it like a spark of hope. The next morning, Graham sent a note. "Need a fresh build for investor run-through." I nodded politely. "Of course, I'll have it ready." He didn't notice the flicker in my eyes when I said it. This time, I would include something extra, nothing harmful, just a hidden diagnostic layer, the kind built to check system understanding. Nobody could stumble through it without knowing the foundation. Rumors started to swirl. Some engineers whispered that Graham seemed unsure when technical questions popped up. "He's great with people," one said, "but every time we push deeper he freezes." I pretended not to hear, but inside, a quiet satisfaction grew. Still, I focused on the final demo. Failure or success would affect everyone, including me. I wanted it perfect. I reviewed logs, trimmed code, refined the diagnostic questions the system would ask during resets. They looked like standard prompts to most eyes, but each one had meaning only I could explain. Late one evening, as screens glowed in the empty office, I caught Graham leaving early again. He gave me a quick nod. "You're still here?" he asked. "Always," I said, not looking up. He chuckled and walked away. He didn't realize I was watching him as closely as he had once watched me. Patience isn't weakness, it's preparation. When I finished the new environment for the pitch, the system ran smoother than ever. I sent Graham the access link, then sat back and let him test it. From my monitor, I watched his cursor flick around the dashboard. He clearly had no idea what half the buttons did. He stayed inside safe menus and smiled like he found treasure. At the rehearsal, he demanded that everyone follow his script exactly. "No technical detours," he said. He avoided me even though he needed me most. I acted invisible, blending into the background while he basked in fake confidence. That night, I checked the scheduling email. Investors were confirmed for 10 a.m. next Monday. Their team specialized in probing internal logic, the kind of people who never accept surface answers. It made sense. They wanted to invest millions. As I closed my laptop, I actually felt calm for the first time. When real knowledge meets a fake expert, the result writes itself. Friday's practice run exposed the first flaw. During the simulation, one investor's test query, an automated scenario, ran slightly off pattern. The system paused longer than expected. Graham froze, eyes darting at the screen. "Just a network lag," he said quickly. Others nodded, but I could tell they weren't convinced. I silently corrected the line of code later, smoothing it perfectly. He thanked me the next day in an email only 10 words long. "Good fix. You're a lifesaver. Don't mention the glitch." He thought hiding weakness made him strong. I thought the glitch was a lesson, proof that you can't sell what you don't understand. The next presentation wouldn't be a rehearsal. When the investors asked their real questions, every bluff would show. I closed the office door behind me and looked at the skyline beyond the glass. Monday, 10 a.m. That's when cracks turned to breaks. The weekend dragged by. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Graham's face beaming beneath the spotlight while my work spun behind him like a stolen crown. I remembered the early days, sitting across from him, notebook open, eager for guidance. Back then, I thought he was brilliant. But now I realized the truth. He was only good at looking brilliant. Everything beneath that shine came from other people's sweat. I brewed coffee at 3 a.m. and stared at the code again. My lines of logic looked like a map of my own patience. Every function had a history. I could almost recall the songs I'd listened to when I wrote them. Graham couldn't take that away. By Sunday night, I packed my bag early for Monday's meeting. This time, I didn't rehearse anger or speeches. I just reviewed facts. I had waited years for one clean moment of truth, and it was almost here. Monday morning hit like a thunderclap. The entire office buzzed. Suits everywhere. Catering trays rolled through halls. Someone sprayed air freshener in the conference room, as if success had a smell. Before the meeting, Graham cornered me near the coffee machine. "Remember," he whispered, "let me field the investor questions, okay? They like consistent leadership." His grin twisted, trying to look friendly. I just nodded. "Of course, Graham." He walked away satisfied. At my desk, I stared at the reflection in my monitor. The person looking back didn't seem angry anymore, just steady. I had already accepted what would happen. I didn't need to expose him. He would expose himself. Around 9:30 the investors arrived, a sharp group in tailored suits, voices low but confident. Their lead, Ms. Carter, was known for tearing flimsy projects apart. I stood beside the door as everyone filed in. This time I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The presentation began the same way as before. Graham at the front, confident stride, perfect tie. "Good morning, everyone," he said in that smooth voice he practiced too much. The lights dimmed, the slides glowed. This time, though, the atmosphere felt different. The investors didn't just watch, they analyzed. Pens scribbled, eyes darted across the screen. I recognized that look, hunters measuring their prey. Halfway through, Ms. Carter leaned forward. "Can you explain the adaptive load routing module?" she asked. My heart skipped. She picked the exact topic I'd built alone. Graham smiled too quickly. "Absolutely. It's a dynamic balancing system that adjusts, automatically based on load signals." His voice stumbled. I watched her eyebrow rise. "Could you elaborate on the algorithm it uses for predictive balancing?" He hesitated. "It's proprietary, of course, but our team leader here could, well, we configure it regularly." He gestured vaguely toward me, barely meeting my eye. The first crack had appeared. When he pointed at me, everyone turned. My pulse jumped, But I stayed quiet. Let him try again, I thought. Ms. Carter didn't blink. So, she said, does that mean there's no fixed model? Graham cleared his throat. Well, we use an adaptive AI engine, like most networks now. Nothing too unusual. I almost smiled. The adaptive AI engine didn't exist. Our system used an old-school mathematical loop built on my code, completely unique. Another investor spoke up. May we see the monitoring logs? He asked. Graham's hand hovered over the keyboard. He looked back at me. Could you, pull those up? The room waited. The silence stretched. Finally, I stood and stepped forward. Sure, I said. My voice cut the air clean. My hands barely shook as I connected to the screen. The log interface came alive, the one nobody else knew how to navigate. I explained what they were seeing. My words were simple, clear, and calm. These metrics come from a real-time diagnostic system that tracks data flow efficiency. That's what keeps the network stable. I zoomed in on a chart. This loop here controls adaptive routing. It predicts overloads by comparing historical latency spikes. The investors nodded, following easily. Graham tried to jump in with a comment but tripped over the terms. Ms. Carter watched me now, not him. You built this core? She asked. Yes, I said quietly. From start to finish. A weight lifted off my chest as if the air itself finally recognized me. Graham stood frozen beside the screen, lips pressed tight. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs. Ms. Carter smiled slightly. That would explain why you seemed so comfortable explaining it. Familiarity helps, I replied, almost smiling. The storm had begun to turn. The investors leaned forward, their notebooks open. Questions came fast and sharp. Each one sliced deeper into what Graham had claimed as his own. I answered clearly, diagramming logic on the screen. The more I spoke, the lighter I felt. For 3 years, my work had carried his name. Now it finally spoke for me. Graham tried to smile through it, tossing in buzzwords, synergy, optimization, cloud leverage. The investors exchanged looks. They weren't fooled. When Ms. Carter asked about the verification layer, Graham started to answer, stumbled, and went silent. Maybe, he said weakly, our engineer here could expand. I expanded. Every word tightened the noose he'd built. The conference room, once his stage, had become my classroom. For the first time, people were truly listening. Something in the room shifted. The investors now directed every question to me. Even the executives turned their chairs toward my side of the table. Graham stood a little apart, nodding stiffly as if approving a student's speech. Ms. Carter set down her pen. I'd like to speak with the technical lead after this meeting, she said. The phrase hung in the air. Technical lead. Everyone knew who she meant. Graham's jaw tightened. He cleared his throat and ended the presentation early, claiming we'd shown enough. But the silence afterward wasn't comfortable. It was heavy. Leaving the room, I heard 2 executives whisper, "Why didn't he know any of that?" I didn't need to listen further. The questions had done their work. After the meeting, emails poured in from management. Investors impressed. Great technical depth shown. Some even congratulated Graham for building a strong team. The irony tasted bitter but sweet. That evening, the investors requested a follow-up session, this time just with the primary developer. Graham couldn't stop it. He looked pale when the message arrived. Before leaving, he tried to sound casual. Maybe I'll let you handle most of the technical talk tomorrow, he said. His voice cracked a little at the end. Of course, I replied. You can introduce me. He forced a smile and walked away quickly. Alone, I shut my laptop and stared at the city lights outside. Once, I had dreamed of standing beside him as equals. Now I would stand alone, under my own name. The next day's room felt emptier. Just me, Graham, the investors, and a few silent executives. Ms. Carter smiled as I powered up the demo. Let's get straight to it. She began with technical checks, but I noticed she wasn't just testing the product. She was testing who really knew it. When she asked about the system security root, a function hidden deep in my architecture, Graham froze entirely. His lips parted, but no words came. Finally, he looked sideways at me. That's part of our, adaptive module. I stepped in. It actually sits below that, I said, opening the code view. The investors leaned closer while I explained. Each line of syntax was a truth written in logic. When I finished, Ms. Carter closed her notebook. That's all I needed. Graham knew it was over. Silence filled the room again, but this time it was different. The investors exchanged quick glances and then turned to me. One asked, "How long have you led development?" I hesitated. 3 years. And your title? Software specialist, I said quietly. They all frowned. Ms. Carter looked at Graham. Seems misclassified. He opened his mouth, shut it, and gave a dry laugh. Titles can be flexible. Not that flexible, she replied. After they left, Graham stood still, face gray. I packed my notes calmly and said, "Investors appreciate honesty." He nodded, but his expression told me he understood. The truth had finally spoken, loud and clear. By afternoon, the office buzzed like a disturbed hive. People whispered in corners, pretending not to stare when I walked by. News traveled at the speed of gossip. The investors had reportedly demanded a leadership review. Graham shut himself in his office. I heard the door slam twice. Later, an executive called me upstairs for a quick chat. The talk lasted hours. They wanted my input on the next phase, my explanations on technical choices, my recommendations. Every question confirmed what everyone already knew. When the meeting ended, the CEO shook my hand. "We'll need you to take point on this from now on." His polite tone couldn't hide the shift. I walked out slowly. The hallway posters of Graham's face suddenly looked like ghosts of something that had never been real. The following morning, Graham called an emergency clarification session. I attended silently while he tried to spin the story. "We've all contributed," he said, glancing my way. "This project is a team effort." The executives listened with blank faces. Then one asked, "If everyone contributed, why didn't you answer any technical questions yesterday?" He stammered about nerves, lights, timing, anything. No one looked convinced. Afterwards, the CEO summoned me privately. "The board wants you as official technical director," he said. My throat tightened. 3 years ago, I built code in darkness. Now I'd been given the name that should have always been mine. When I walked out of his office, people clapped quietly. Some looked ashamed. I just nodded, still half in disbelief. That evening, Graham waited by the elevator. "Hey," he said softly. His tie hung loose, voice smaller than ever. "I didn't mean for this to get ugly." "It got honest," I answered. He sighed. "Maybe we could still." "No, Graham. You had your chance to give credit when it mattered." I didn't raise my voice. That calmness seemed to unsettle him more than anger ever could. He nodded, eyes low. The elevator doors opened, reflecting both of us in metal. For a second, he looked exactly like he had during old work nights. Tired, uncertain, human. Then he stepped inside and vanished behind the closing doors. Within a week, official announcements went out. The project had secured full funding. My name appeared beside the title lead architect. Colleagues sent congratulatory messages, some long, others just a line. "You deserve this." When I walked through the hallway now, people stopped to greet me. They wanted to hear about the system, not Graham's slogans. He resigned quietly that month, citing personal reasons. I didn't celebrate his departure. The truth had already done what revenge never could. It balanced the scale. One afternoon, I stood in the same glass-walled conference room where everything started. The light felt softer somehow, as if the room itself had forgiven me for staying silent so long. Months later, the platform launched worldwide without a single failure. Investors sent messages praising the technology. Leadership called me a pillar of innovation. Titles and applause felt nice, but that wasn't what stayed with me. What mattered was the moment in that first meeting when truth finally surfaced on its own. I hadn't shouted, fought, or begged. I had simply waited for knowledge to speak. Looking out through the glass wall, I thought of those nights I stayed when everyone went home. Maybe patience had always been the real victory. Sometimes, silence isn't weakness, it's timing. And when that timing comes, even the loudest thief can't speak over the quiet voice of the one who truly built it all.